not used to people speaking in public. That's my support system. My dad was kind to people, and he loved animals and nature. And he loved telling stories, especially about his children and grandchildren. When I was younger, there was many trips to Calgary, and he took us to the zoo quite often. Dad had a soft heart for animals, especially any that were lost or injured. He would care for them. I remember Dad taking a baby duck or a bunny, or even one time I think it was a beaver when it was lost on the road. He would take care of them, warm them up, and then take them back to where he thought their mother was, down to the lake. Dad loved dogs, especially German Shepherd dogs. We had many of them, white ones, brown ones, black and brown ones. Growing up, we had a large picture window. Many times birds would hit this window, and Dad would go outside and bring these birds in and care for them. Usually, a sniff of brandy was all the bird needed. That was the trick, that the bird would fly. In Dad's later years, he also had a picture window in his bedroom just off the back patio. He enjoyed feeding the many birds that came to his feeders, even the squirrels. He could easily watch the birds come and go, even in his last days. It seemed that Dad knew the name of every tree, flower, plant, and bird. It was in Polish, mind you, but he knew them all. Dad took an interest in whatever we were doing, whether it was figure skating, volleyball, organ lessons. He even would come to see me at work, even if I was busy. I remember Saturday nights, that was always bath night in our house as children. After bath time, it was hockey night in Canada. I would curl up on my dad's lap and watch hockey, and we'd share mandarin oranges. It was such a special time. When Dad would tell me stories about him growing up, he would always make these stories sound like adventures, not hardships. Dad would say, "That's how life goes sometimes." When I needed advice about work, Dad would tell me not to worry. You can always make money later. I had the pleasure of traveling to Poland with my dad. We were able to see where Dad was born and the family palace. He told me we came from noble people. Dad was proud of the family that came before him, as well as the family that came after him. I treasured seeing Dad's excitement when we visited Poland. He always told people he met in his travels stories about children, his children, and his grandchildren in Canada. How great we are and how proud he is of all of them. Dad would always help people. He was kind. On our flight home from Poland, we met an elderly man who had never been on a plane before. Dad made sure this gentleman made it all the way to Edmonton. Dad made sure to show gratitude. He said thank you to everyone who helped him. And when he said thank you, he meant it from the bottom of his heart. Dad loved having everyone around. He liked the noise, the chit-chat, especially from his grandchildren. Even on his last day, I'm sure he was happy. Everyone was around him, chatting away. He was in his happy place. This is how I'll remember my dad.
had something that made saying goodbye so hard. My dad always said he was 1 year older than his actual age because he believed he was living in that year. My dad was always about living the best life that he could. A life of 96 years, or 97 as he would have referred to it, you get a lot of accomplishments and you have to overcome a lot of obstacles to settle and be as successful as he was in Canada. Leaving the legacy that can be witnessed by looking at the room of kids and grandkids is truly worth a life worthy of celebration. My dad had two North Stars in life, his faith and his family. I remember as a child, we never missed going to Sunday Mass, no matter how bad the roads were, how cold it was, or how busy the various members of the family were. He always made time for himself and all the kids to go to church. He supported my mom unconditionally as she fulfilled her duties in helping out at the church. He taught us how to contribute to society through his involvement with the church, whether he was flipping pancakes at the Knights of Columbus breakfast, volunteering John and I to help clean up after the breakfast, or one of his many meetings with church committees, or his desire to get Catholic schools built so his children, grandchildren, and now great-grandchildren could attend. He was active in the church community here in Stony Plain, as well as Holy Rosary of Edmonton. He wasn't afraid to bring up new ideas to make this community of faith stronger, including his petition year after year to have Easter basket blessings at Easter time here in Stony Plain. When the priest in Stony Plain finally agreed to have a formal Easter basket blessing, I think my dad was a little bit confused whether he should go to Holy Rosary for blessings as he traditionally done, or attend the one here in Stony Plain that is so vigorously lobbied for. My dad's faith guided him in so many ways. For him, decisions were easy when they related to faith, throughout his life, right down to his final days. He had his rosary from Mater Gloria hanging on his wall when he no longer had the strength to hold it in his hand as he prayed. My parents, with their Polish background, had an infallible commitment to Mary and the rosary. Often mom and dad would be praying together, and as kids we knew that this was their time together, and we were always welcome to join them, never not forget. In speaking with my mom, she attributed the fact that the family stayed together and healthy to the fact that we prayed together as a family. We always said the rosary, and that made our family stronger in the toughest of times. My dad's other priority, as I mentioned, was his family. My dad would tell you he was the richest man in the world, not based on what he had in his bank account, but by the love he had in his heart for his family. From the 8 children, the 14 grandchildren, and the 6 great-grandchildren. He loved us all, and we loved him back right to his last day. We didn't always have the best of everything, but he made sure we had everything we needed. Even if it was a hand-me-down hockey equipment, or a yellow hockey helmet that he got on sale, he made sure we had what we needed. Family time was important to Dad. Having lunch, and especially supper together, was a priority of his. Even if we had hockey practice, or my dad was just getting home from work and was tired and had to go to the beach for his second shift, he always made time for us to have supper together. On Saturday nights and Sunday afternoons, he always made sure we had time for a family dinner. He was known to change the time of Sunday supper to accommodate one of the kids who was arriving late or had to leave early, just so we could all be there. My dad had a commitment to his children. He drove us to hockey through snowstorms, and after working a long day, a cold day at work, he wouldn't hesitate to drive us. There's many a time when my dad would be having a nap in his truck during one of my hockey practices. Here I thought he may have been busy and didn't have time to watch, but really he was just trying to get rest after a grueling day of plying his trade. He was sacrificing getting to bed early or having a good night's sleep, taking us where we needed to go. He never complained when he had that third practice of the week or the extra money we needed to sharpen our skates again. He always had a quarter to buy me a Coke after practice. As I grew older, my dad's interest in my success turned to his interest in my children's success. My dad always had time for his grandchildren right down to his final day. He was so loving of them all, offering to be a transplant donor for one, to helping them purchase cars, helping them with their educations. He always was there for his grandchildren and will now have to cheer them on from heaven. To all his grandchildren, know that Grandpa is still your biggest fan and cheerleader and always will be. I will miss getting a call on Sunday nights. That's when my dad called each of us. If you were early on his list, you'd be the subject of the update he gave to other brothers and sisters that he called later in the evening. He always wanted to talk and make sure everything was okay. He always asked what was new in our lives. He didn't judge, offered advice, and his call was as reliable as the Maytag dishwasher. After a weekend visit to Mom and Dad, we would give Dad a call to let him know we got home safely. After getting the update, he would ask when we're coming next. Guess he just didn't get enough of us. As I've raised my family, Dad has been an endless source of wisdom and support. He offered suggestions when asked, never criticized, and was always supportive. He let us make mistakes and offered suggestions when we needed and asked for help. I know he always had my back and was a voice of reason that both Stacy and I could rely on. He encouraged my girls to have dreams and to chase those dreams. He never told them they couldn't do one thing or another. He always cheered them on and was always supportive. My dad always wanted us to be together, whether it was Sunday dinners, getting together at Christmas, or having a late night bonfire in the backyard after we've done a hard day of work at the beach. Dad loved to see the family together. He would be so proud of how we are all here today to support him.
I'm just going to continue on with what Peter said. Dad taught me about accountability, determination, traditions, and that hard work will get you somewhere. In the summers, we all helped work at the beach. Dad would wake us up at 7 a.m. on Saturday and tell us the day was half over already. It was tough getting up at that time as a teenager. But what we didn't appreciate was that Dad had already been up for a couple of hours working. Dad worked hard and tried to instill that trait in all of us. Dad was a problem solver. I had the honor of building many houses with my dad. I was always fascinated by his ingenuity to solve construction problems and his endless ways to ensure that the room was always square. Dad did not like being late. He always wanted to be on time. He'd often get the car ready for church on Sunday mornings and be waiting for us. If we were late, he'd be sure to honk the horn and let us know that we were late. Dad may have also been known to get pulled over for speeding on the way to church, trying to make sure he got us there on time. Dad was a smooth talker and got off with a warning on occasion. My brother-in-law had told me a story about working with my dad on a project up in Peace River. Not only was Dad one of the first people always on the job site in the morning, but he went and bought a used mountain bike so he could get to and from the camp for lunch. My dad was always determined to find a better way to do things. My brother Mark told me about how hard my dad worked at the church. My dad and my Uncle Leo worked many evenings to finish the basement in the church, and this is the old one in Stony Plain. Back in the earlier days. Mark would finish hockey practice and have to walk to the church afterwards to get a ride home. My dad believed in family traditions, whether it was his prized recipe for salad dressing, eating Christmas Eve dinner as the first star came out, setting out an extra place at the table in case a stranger came. They had a lot of strangers actually come. At least us kids, they were strangers, but we always had people there. Or blessing Easter baskets. Dad loved tradition and tried to make sure traditions were passed on. I've carried on many of our family traditions with pride. My dad built many homes in his cul-de-sac out at Spring Lake. That was his retirement plan. Guess it was a great way to beat the rush of traffic and make sure he could get home for a warm lunch.
So we'd like to have a toast to our dad. I think it's only fitting to honor him by raising our glasses. So please stand and raise a glass with me. To Stanley, my dad,